What's your go-to story to tell at parties? I was sitting on the train in my way home from university one night and the girl next to me opened up Tinder and I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a jolly good time. So I'm quietly sitting there pretending to stare out the window whilst in reality I'm squinting my eyes to watch her phone. She's over there swiping like no tomorrow, left 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 right left, and I'm thinking quite a choice selection. Suddenly I pop up on the radar. I thought I deleted Tinder months ago but it's still on my phone, so I'm guessing I didn't. I'm confused. I'm uncomfortable. I'm working up a sweat. She looks through my photo, zooms in on a picture of my dogs, tilts her phone to admire their fur, flicks through one more time, swipes left. I used to manage audit shift at a pretty upscale hotel in downtown Nashville, so we'd get a ton of musicians, from up and coming young stars to people past their prime who have moved on to more behind the scenes work. One night a wedding party is in the lobby having drinks and celebrating, and this short, dark-haired unassuming dude walks by and starts chatting with them while waiting for the elevator. He tells them he's a musician in town on business, and they start grilling him about his career. He's super humble, says he's been on a few hit singles way back in the 80s, but won't really give much more info than that despite the group pressing him to share more. The elevator doors finally open. He steps on, and right before the doors close, in the loudest freaking voice I've ever heard, he belts out, "It's gonna take a lot to drag Emmy away from YOUUUUUUUU." The lobby is instantly silenced as everyone turns to look at him as the elevator doors close and he disappears. It was Bobby Kimball, vocalist of Toto for some 20 years. The dude's unamplified voice absolutely blew me away with how powerful it was. I love this one. It was my first time babysitting for a new family that I met through a babysitting Facebook page. I get to the house and it's pretty dark outside, so I can't see any of the addresses. I text the mom asking which house was theirs, and she tells me that it's the one with the wreath on the door and the inflatable penguin out front. It was around Christmas, so I go up to the house and knock on the door. A man answers and I apologize for being slightly late and he says they're in the basement. I get downstairs and there's a group of 4 or 5 8th grade / 14-year-old girls. I'm a little confused because I thought I was babysitting younger kids, but I figure there must be younger siblings somewhere. I'm sitting there awkwardly shooting the breeze with these girls and I notice that I have a missed call from the mom, so I text her saying I'm in the basement. Your husband let me in immediately. I get another call just as a woman is walking downstairs. Simultaneously I have both women telling me I'm in the wrong house. I guess the husband thought I was an older sister of one of the 8th grade girls and let me in thinking I was picking them up. The families were friends though, so they laughed about it. Never got asked to babysit again though. Halfway through I thought this story was going to be way much darker. I have a few naughty stories to tell if I know the people well. These include police, being kicked out of nightclubs, but here's my easy digest starter level inoffensive story I tell at parties when I don't want to offend. Back at university I used to frequent my local corner shop a lot to buy beer and noodles and energy drinks to keep my student self happy. The chap working there was this Asian guy around my age. We used to have banter and chat and have a laugh every time I went in there. The weird thing was I noticed over time he would really blow hot and cold. Some days we would be like best mates and other days he'd just completely shut me down with a blank expression when I tried to engage him. I just couldn't figure out what his deal was. One day I went to the shop at around 2 AM to buy noodles and energy drinks. The guy was cold and not very friendly. 5 hours of Halo matchmaking later and I'm in there again at 7 AM. "Hey man, how's it going? You're up early," he greets me. "Yeah, I'm good. I can't believe you were working 5 hours ago and you're up working again now though. It's like you have a clone or something." He replies, "I wasn't working last night. My brother was." Yup folks, identical twins. So identical I had been treating them as one person for the best part of 2 years. Turns out one brother is a legend and one is a grumpy bastard. I'm ready for the offensive material now. I used to often talk about the time I was in a hostel in a small town in Italy. Turns out there was this older guy in the same room, someone I'd met randomly in Rome a few days earlier. Weird coincidence. He spoke Spanish, I spoke English. We kinda smiled and nodded at each other and he showed me some pictures of Rome or something. Then, that night, I woke up to him standing next to my bed, playing with my balls. Miscusey. I used to work with my stepdad's brother-in-law, who we will call Flynn Riddle. Flynn was a strange character. He was born and raised in Indiana and had only recently moved to Georgia. He hated it. One day I asked him why he was so anti-Georgia, and he said that after he had been here for about a week the police came to his house and tried to arrest him. He was in the back of the police car when they realized they had the wrong person and let him go. Apparently they had been looking for a different Flynn Riddle. I asked my stepdad about this because did he know if it was bulls or not, and he said it was true but that Flynn had let out one key detail. The other Flynn Riddle they were looking for was Flynn's half-brother. Apparently a few years before Flynn was born his dad, also named Flynn Riddle, had been married to a woman and had a son named Flynn Riddle. Things didn't work out and they split up. Flynn Sr. remarried and had another son who he decided to name Flynn Riddle. The older Flynn Jr. went on to become a sex offender and the sheriff's department in GA where the Flynn I knew moved to thought he was jumping state or something. Dennis looks like a registered sex offender. God I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. One of Paul McCartney's kids went to my school when I was younger. One day I was having a trumpet lesson in a room on the ground floor with the window open, and halfway through he appeared outside the window and asked me if he could hear me play. I'm just getting ready to play some scales when my teacher says something along the lines of, "No, he's not good enough," and Paul left. I'm still not sure if I should be angry at my music teacher or thankful that he stopped me from deafening one of the most significant musicians of all time. I'm kind of a big, mean-looking guy that was born with resting B face. I am also not a great socializer and kind of reserved, so whenever I'm out at some function with my wife, who is a great socializer, I will tell this story. My wife and I were in Vegas and were supposed to meet some friends for dinner at the top of a high-rise hotel. To say I'm scared of heights is an understatement. This restaurant was on the 72th floor. No prob. But no one told me that after the first floor, it actually goes on the outside of the building and is all glass. Well, I proceeded to do what any normal human should do, and I went to my hands and knees, trying to get as low to the floor as possible, all the while making these involuntary moaning guttural noises. My wife had never seen me like this, nor really had I since I successfully managed to never put myself in this position. She thought I was joking and kept whispering, "Get up, you're embarrassing me." She told me this later. All I could hear was a ringing in my ears. There were probably about 6 or 7 other people on this elevator, and I had been in the back, but crawled between them towards the door. Seemed like forever, but eventually we got to the top and the doors opened and I crawled out. I'll only tell this story if it is relevant or fits into the conversation somehow, but since I've told it a couple of times, I'm not too awkward telling it. Plus it seems to humanize me a bit. Almost got banned off the Fort Edmonton trolley because apparently me, a toddler at the time with my parents, standing up to get off the train constitutes terrorism and hijacking. A toddler hijacking a streetcar for terrorism. What? Toddlers are terrorists. Usually if we start talking about animals I bring up the time I fed a giraffe. I'm a South African living in Canada, and one year I went back to visit, like I'm doing now, and I went to a game reserve. I got the chance to feed a giraffe. I had some pellets in my hand and I held it up to the giraffe, expecting it to sort of gobble it up with its big lips. Instead the dang thing wrapped its massive tongue around the right side of my hand, wrapping it underneath the hand so it could scoop the contents of my hand from the left side of my hand. It was like having a prickly, slimy dildo wrap itself around my hand. Frickin' long-necked horses. Giraffes are dumb. The real saint, Nick Santa, literally punched a priest in the face for being a heretic. I'd like to think he followed it up by saying Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. I always find it weird when people refer to St. Nicholas as the real Santa because we celebrate St. Nicholas on the 6th of December, Sinterklaas. So to me St. Nicholas and Santa are two whole different people. That being said, he also resurrected 3 boys that were cut up by a butcher during a famine, so he was a pretty decent guy in the end. The one about my murderous pet fish and how karma then appeared in the form of a hungry seagull. Basically me and my sister each had a pet fish growing up, and they lived in the same tank. One day my fish trapped her fish next to the water filter and wouldn't let him out. My fish kept guard, and whenever the other fish tried to escape, my fish would attack it and force it back into its prison. Eventually my sister's fish starved while mine got very big, too big for the tank. We had a pond outside and decided to put my fish in there so that he could swim about more happily. A couple of days after he was initially put in the pond, we were all outside playing when a large seagull came flying down, grabbed my fish in its beak and then flew away again. That's also how Fez's fish, Goldie, dies in that 70s show. They show him setting her free in a stream, and you hear him say, "Swim Goldie swim," then you hear a bird screeching and Fez yells, "Fly, Goldie, fly." I like to tell the story of what happened after my last stand-up comedy show. The thing is, I've never really been a comedian. I'm a storyteller. I'm not too picky about how I tell stories, either, which actually got me into trouble the last time I was doing stand-up. I had also been making short films at the time, and when a guy started talking to me after my set, I mentioned those movies to him. "Oh, they sound hilarious," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "Actually, I'm headed back to my apartment now. You could come along if you'd like to see some of my work." The fellow looked me in the eyes and answered, "Oh, I would love to see your work." I really should have known what was coming, but at the time, I was just excited that someone actually wanted to watch something that I'd made. Someone other than my mother. I mean, the two of us went back to my place. I got us each a beer, and I put on the first short film. We made it about halfway through, so maybe 3 minutes, before the guy leaned in and tried to kiss me. "Oh, hey, whoa," I said, pulling back a bit. "Sorry, it's up. I didn't mean to give you any ideas." My guest sighed and shook his head. "No, it's okay. I should have known that you had a boyfriend." No, I don't," I answered. "I'm just not gay." "Yes, you are." Now, I've been rejected before. I've rejected people before, and I've had people doubt me before. But that was the first time I'd ever had someone doubt my rejection. "No, really," I stammered. "You're gay," the guy interrupted. Don't lie if you're not interested, just tell me." "I'm not interested," I replied, "but it's only because I'm not gay." Without saying another word, the young man stood up, glared at me, then left my apartment. I thought about chasing after him, but, well, that probably would have only confused things further. Besides, I was genuinely worried that he was going to slap me. That might not seem like such a big deal, but you only think that because you've been picturing this fellow wrong. Yes, he had a high, flamboyant voice, and he was about as effeminate as a male could hope to be. He was also about 6'5", 250 pounds, and built like a goddamned freight train. Had he slapped me, I probably would have needed to suck down my meals for the next few weeks. That's not. Seriously, I'm not gay. TLDR. I often tell the story of the time that I accidentally led a guy on. I really should have known what was coming, but at the time, I was just excited that someone actually wanted to watch something that I'd made. Bless your heart. Whenever I first gained liberty after I graduated boot camp, a couple buddies and I decided to go get drunk on the beach. It was a cold day and the sun wasn't out, so we left after an hour or two and a few of us went to see a movie. We still had 2 half-liters of liquor with us, so I poured one in my movie theater soda and the other 2 split the other bottle. Don't remember much of the movie, but as we were walking back to the bus stop I could hear a jackhammer going on in a store of the mall we were at. There were 2 workers sitting on the planter outside of the store and I asked the guys inside if I could hop on it for a minute. They looked at each other and waved me back. Dude slaps the guy on the back who was using it and just pointed at the jackhammer, then to me, then to the jackhammer again. At this point he hands it off to me and I notice I've got a bit of a crowd of laborers around me. I dropped the machine on my foot once or twice, but other than that had a good time helping them demo some stuff for a few minutes. My buddies ditched me because he thought they would call the cops on me. Missed out on a great time. TLDR got really drunk and helped a construction crew demo a store at the mall. I've posted about this before. I started reading at a very young age, and one of my dad's favorite authors was Stephen King. When I was in elementary school, I started pulling his books off the shelves and reading them. I loved them. So, when I was 8 and The Shining came out, My dad took me to see it. It was scary, but I liked it. The thing you have to know about my dad is that he's a very nice guy, but he's an alcoholic. High functioning, but still a drinker. He also looks a lot like Jack Nicholson. His name is also a John, but everyone calls him Jack. So, after the movie, we're home, and my 8-year-old self is in bed. Lights out, door closed. I'm almost asleep when my bedroom door slams open, and in limps my dad, dragging a full-size axe, yelling, "Here's Johnny." Chaos ensued. I bolted upright, screaming. My mom and brother ran in. My dad dropped the axe and ran to me. I didn't want him to touch me, of course. I believe he ended up sleeping on the couch for a few nights. I wasn't allowed to read Stephen King for a while, which peed me off. Now we laugh about it, but it was pretty crazy. My GF likes me telling this one at parties more than I do. She uses it as a cautionary tale. When I was stationed in Europe, I liked to travel alone during 4-day weekends. One of those times I went to Venice. I stayed at a hostel and had a great time. Gorgeous city. On my last night the hostel was having a pub crawl. Cool. I wouldn't mind getting tipsy. We get outside the hostel and the leader hands us all shot glasses on a string to wear around our necks. Okay, that is a bit weird, I thought to myself. He explained that for each bridge we cross we need to take a shot of crappy vodka he had on him. There are over 200 bridges in Venice. At about bridge 4 this nice young Aussie gal says she can't take any more shots, so me being the drunk hero I was, offered to take hers as well. That is when things went from okay to terrible. I remember about 3 more bridges and 2 bars. Next thing I know I woke up in an alleyway at 3 AM shirtless with my camera and wallet gone. Luckily I kept my passport in the room. I still had my key, so I stumble back into the room and get ready for my flight. Upon arriving back in Germany I realized I didn't have a few things that may make getting back to base easy. A debit card, cash, and my military ID. Frick. I plead with a train station attendant and she gives me a free ticket to get home. This woman was a sin and I hope only good has happened in her life. I then walked the 5 miles from the station to base and had to explain to the guards why I didn't have my ID. Overall, I loved Venice, but I am never doing another fricking pub crawl there. There are people who will take advantage of drunks anywhere. Probably a good idea to avoid getting overly blitzed regardless of where you are. The story of how my parents met. They've known each other for many years, but only because they used to have overlapping friend groups and run in kind of the same circles and businesses. At various points in their careers, they would chat, like at a hotel lobby or in a convention center or whatever, but they didn't really know each other. A month after my dad got divorced, and a week before my mom left the East Coast for Colorado, they bumped into each other. My mom asked him how he was doing, and his response was pretty much horrible. "My wife just cheated on me, so I left her." Earlier that day, he had bought a twin bed frame and sworn off women entirely. My mom invited him out for dinner. They met on a Tuesday, had their first date on Thursday, and married on Saturday. They've been married for 26 years. I was born in the twin bed my dad bought when he swore off women. It's a pretty great story, and I love telling it. It's nice to remind my mom sometimes too. When she says I'm being irresponsible, my retort is always, well, I'm not marrying a guy I just met. On a Tuesday, I hiked to Mt. Everest base camp and almost got frostbite along the way, but usually I tell the one where a monkey bit me in Thailand. I need to hear your monkey story. I was on an expedition with a bunch of history nerds like me and I fell on the Great Pinned face down. I broke my nose on a 7th wonder of the world. I had a camel man, who did not speak a bit on English, reset my nose. What a life. One time I went on a blind date. He was a friend of a friend, so I actually let him pick me up at my house. After 5 minutes in the car I could tell this wasn't the guy for me, but I thought I'd at least have a nice night out. We went to dinner where this guy, a trust fund baby, treated the waitstaff like crap. I just kept apologizing to everyone behind his back. Dinner was painfully slow. I barely said 4 words. He sat through the whole meal talking about himself, and even took a few phone calls, where, of course, He talked very loudly. At the end of the meal I even had to throw some more tip money on the table discreetly because he tipped so poorly. He asked if I wanted to go somewhere for dessert and I told him I had to be up early. All I wanted was this date to be over. We pull up to my house and he gets out of his car to walk me to the door. I'm dreading getting to my porch and having to dodge him trying to kiss me. He leans in to give me a hug and I breathe a sigh of relief, only to have him lean in and, out of the blue, lick my neck. Like a dog, tongue out of mouth and lapping at my neck. He did it once and walked away without saying goodnight. I didn't know what to even think. It was bizarre. For the next few days I felt like I couldn't clean my neck well enough. It was disgusting. Best of all, he texted me for another date. Needless to say, he didn't get one. If growing up with siblings taught me anything, it's that when you lick something it belongs to you now. You are his property now. In high school, I was at a house party about 20 minutes away from my hometown. I was there with a couple buddies and didn't really know anyone there, so I said frick it, I'll go anyway. At the party, I see this girl look over and give me a look. By the look this chick gave me, I could tell she was feeling my vibe, so I go over and start talking to her. I could tell from the start, this girl had crazy eyes, but I was like yeah whatever, frick it, she's attractive. I end up going home with this girl, and she was just as crazy as she looked. She had these claw-like nails that tore up my back like an angry lion tearing into its prey. Fast forward to 3-4 am, and I just want to get out of there, so I slip out of bed, toss my pants on, grab my clothes and start to leave. She wakes up as I'm leaving and she goes, "Where you going, babe?" "Oh, I gotta go, I have to go work in the morning, blah blah blah." All of a sudden she springs out of bed and yells, "You're leaving Emmy." At this point, I'm hauling butt to get out of the house, and as I reach the door, this girl has a knife from the kitchen and starts chasing Emmy. I book it out of the house. No shoes, no shirt, only pants on, carrying everything, and take off down the road about 2 miles sprinting and dive headfirst into a bush, waiting there for 20-30 minutes hoping to God she never found me. First and only time I've almost been murdered by a hookup. I normally tell one of my many band stories, since I am sober, year and a half, and everyone else is normally drinking. It helps me fit in with the crowd discussing my days of excess and shenanigans. Let's hear one. When I was 11 years old, me and my friends went to our neighborhood's local park. We were all chilling and having a good time when, out of nowhere, a friend of mine ran up to the main, and only, entrance to the park. He was out of breath, and with one mighty gasp of air managed to scream, "Let's call my friend here, John. John's dog is coming." We were all very perplexed, and everyone in the park, around 40 people, stopped dead in their tracks and looked at my friend. The guy then looks back and runs into the park, and what do you know, behind him, my friend bounds into the park, with his hands on the dog's leash, who was a big butt German Shepherd. John was a scrawny kid like me, and he was being dragged along by the dog, so the dog makes his round around the park, scaring the frick out of everyone, and then does a 180, right to where us 11-year-olds were standing. I knew we were fricked, but you gotta do what you gotta do. We hauled butt and made way to a friend's house, which was nearby. The dog was right on our tail, and we were all running in a which can be best described as resembling cartoons running in a line away from someone. Well, in the end we managed to outrun the dog, and John let go of his dog's leash, and the dog went wild, only to be caught by the military police in our area an hour later. Fun times. TLDR, read the whole thing, damn it. I think you mean 180. A story I like to refer to as the Vegemite incident. I, Australian, was in America a couple of years ago via a school study camp, and I stayed with a local family for a couple of weeks. After introducing them to Vegemite, my host family brother, let's call him David, suggested that we place a load of Vegemite into a little roll to give to a mate of his, who we'll call Toby. I agreed, and we proceeded to carefully place 3 large knifeles of Vegemite into the roll without leaving any marks on the outside of the roll. David had suggested that we place 5 knifeles in, which I refused to do. Anyway, the next day came along and the first period was band practice being held outside. David gave the roll to Toby whilst stood and watched from a distance. David and I had expected Toby to take a somewhat small bite of the roll, spit it out, and then proceed to laugh about his surprised reaction. This wasn't the case. Lo and behold, Toby put the whole roll in his mouth and basically swallowed it whole. The Vegemite's salty taste took a second or two to kick in, at which stage Toby ran to a nearby ditch to throw up. Despite expecting a stern wording and punishment from a teacher, David and I got away scot-free. Hilariously, Toby actually got told off by the teacher of that period. For the rest of that day, I got a few pats on the back and praise from some of the American students. The Vegemite incident. I, Australian. I guess I didn't need to tell us that you were Australian. Vegemite is enough. Don't really like it that much. I've eaten a bit when I was in Australia. How I tried to buy tortillas and ending up at a C dealer's house at 2 in the morning. My school has a yearly soccer game against our rival, and one of the traditions is throwing tortillas onto the field. I didn't have a ticket for the game so I didn't go, but my roommates did and took all of my tortillas. Right when they left I had a sudden craving for a quesadilla, but I had to go to the store to buy more tortillas. On my way there, I ran into some friends who happened to have a spare ticket to the game. So I said screw it and decided to go. On the way to the game we started passing around a joint, and I asked the guy where he got it from. Since I was looking for a dealer, he told me he got it for free from a guy named Moose. He also warned me the guy dealt C was very sketchy and had a habit of making vague threats. I decided I wouldn't see Moose. After the game, I wanted to go back home but I got caught up in a huge group of people cruising for parties and it would have been awkward to leave. Somehow, the group split up throughout the night until it was just me and 2 other guys, but we knew each other so it was still worth sticking around. As party hopping goes, it became very late very fast, and it was almost 1 in the morning. We tried to get into one last party but they turned every guy away. We started chatting up another dude that got turned away, who suggested we all go back to his place and smoke. I liked the idea but I didn't nearly have enough weed for everyone. It's okay, this guy says my roommate has a little bit he could give you. Why not? The store is closed. I'm not gonna get any quesadillas at this point. We go to his apartment, which is only a block away, and meet his roommate. I ask if he has weed, and the guy says a bit. This W comes back with multiple gallon Ziploc bags stuffed with weed, like almost bursting at the seams. He pulls out an industrial scale and starts weighing it while making conversation with us. I finally ask his name. Oh, I'm Moose. I practically shat myself, given that I was warned less than 12 hours ago to not meet this guy. My friend, however, had not gotten that message. Wait, you're the guy that sells C. Moose nods, goes back to his room and comes back with a block of coke. I don't know coke measurements but it was a lot, and a gun of some sort tucked into his pants. We continued to make awkward small talk as this guy scientifically distributes us drugs. Not wanting to stay any longer than we have to, we decided to leave. We said our goodbyes, paid him and left, walking down the street with roughly $300 of drugs between the 3 of us. He got arrested a month or 2 ago, from what I've heard. Shame. He was actually kind of a cool guy, and yes, I eventually got a quesadilla. I went to a party with a bunch of friends one night this past summer. There are around 200 people at this house and it was by far the biggest party I've ever been to. Anyway, there's this pond in front of the owner's barn and we were all hanging around it and making conversation. A few minutes later, we noticed a firework went off on one side of the pond go off, and everyone started to cheer. Well, not too long after a bunch of people started to run to their cars and leave. Turns out the guy who lit the firework had it between his legs and his penis literally was blown off and the owner had to call an ambulance. There was blood everywhere. Definitely how me making pot brownies landed me my career in IT. I was at a stupid retail job, hated it, and one of their policies was you couldn't carry over vacay days. I had to take off the week before Christmas. No one was off then, so I decided I would make a batch of pot brownies, first time ever BTW, and chow down and play video games all day. I make the brownies, eat one. I used a crap ton of pot, just in case, and about 45 minutes in I was pee because I felt nothing. I wait 5 more minutes and eat a second. Literally minutes after I eat the second, the first kicks in. Big time. I was like, oh crap. Anyway, playing video games that high isn't great, so I watched Sally Jessy Raphael. I took a nap in the afternoon, woke up around 7, still high. I went to the kitchen and realized I didn't put the rest of the brownies away, and 2 were missing. I hightailed it to my very conservative roommate's room, who was playing with a ball on his bed, smiling away. I asked, "Did you eat those brownies?" with a huge smile on my face. He replied yes, and I just started laughing. Anyway, he told his boss that he was still high the next day at work, and the boss said to get me in for an interview still in IT, but not that job. Sounds like a pretty dang cool boss. I talk about the time where I worked at Disney and the villains used to pop up right in front of Cinderella Castle for the Halloween parties. I was with Jafar that day. Jafar is creepy, even to me sometimes. We were walking backstage at the end of Jafar's set and his fingertips were touching in front of him as an evil villain might look while he was walking. He was staring down a child who was walking hand in hand with his mom for a good 15 seconds until boom. Kid smacks face first into the trash can. Jafar, myself, and the character attendant walk off as fast as we can. We were almost backstage at this point, because we couldn't control our laughter. Kid looked dazed but walked away unscathed. This is a story about my first trip overseas to Scotland and using Airbnb. So I get to Scotland, and the guy from Airbnb picks me up from the airport and says I'll give you a tour of Edinburgh, so I get in his car, and we start driving. The dude is going 10 miles per hour in the middle of Edinburgh, stopping and telling me to take pictures. He is also making super illegal U-turns, cutting off trucks and buses. So we get back to his house and asks if I want coffee. The entire time this is happening, the guy is giving me creepy vibes. So he makes me some coffee and I take 1 sip of it and it tastes super off. I take 2 more and tell him I'm not drinking this. At that point I go to my bedroom and realize there's only 1 bedroom. Apparently this dude sleeps sitting up in his living room. There are no locks on any doors. One of many red flags. I start feeling really weird. Not normal at all. We talked and he used to teach in the South Pacific a lot. Never been married. The whole thing just weirded me out. So I leave to go to a bar to get out. Entire time I feel odd. Takes about 2 hours for the weird feeling to go away. Okay, whatever, he's a gay dude. Whatever, I don't have an issue with gay folks. I hadn't eaten that day yet. Thought the feeling weird might be that. I then go have some drinks at a local bar. I see if he wants to go have dinner because I'm a nice guy. So we go out to this place and sit down next to this young guy. Looks 15 but was 18. The guy proceeds to start hitting on this 18-year-old guy, trying to get him to join us for dinner, so that was an awkward hour of dinner. After that he goes back home, and I go find another bar. I get back to my room at like 11 PM. I text my GF and my mom and tell them exactly where I'm at, and if they don't hear from me first thing tomorrow to call the police. I then put my bag in front of my door and go to sleep. I wake up the next morning and my door is open and my bag has been moved. At that point I say frick this noise and have him take me to the train station. And that's my only Airbnb story, and I will never do it again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.